Not even 2 days after the United States launched a mission to escort commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, it has now said it will pause doing so. U.S. President Donald Trump said the decision had been taken following a request by Pakistan and other countries. He added that progress had been made towards a peace deal and that the pause of the mission will reveal whether or not the agreement can be finalized. The dispute over shipping through Hormuz as well as Iran's nuclear program are at the heart of the deadlocked talks between Washington and Tehran. While the ceasefire between the two holds, it does remain fragile. On Tuesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the U.S. would retaliate with a, quote, devastating response if Iran were to attack shipping in the waterway. Iran has also warned Washington against further escalation and claims it is the action of the U.S. and its allies that has put shipping security at risk.
A French aircraft carrier strike group is moving south of the Suez Canal and into the Red Sea in preparation for a potential mission as part of a plan for the Strait of Hormuz led by France and Britain. The French forces announced on Wednesday that the repositioning of the nuclear-powered Charles de Gaulle is the latest stage of a Middle East deployment. The move puts France's only carrier closer to the Persian Gulf choke point, where a fifth of the world's oil normally transits and where Iran has effectively halted commercial traffic since early March. The wider Hormuz coalition was drawn up by France, Britain and more than 50 nations. However, Colonel Guillaume Vernet, spokesman for the French Armed Forces Chief of Staff, stressed that the coalition will not begin operating until two thresholds are cleared. First, the threat to shipping must come down and the maritime industry must be reassured enough to use the strait. Second, any operation would require the agreement of neighboring countries. The Charles de Gaulle carries around 20 Rafale fighter jets and is escorted by 8 frigates.
3 patients with suspected hantavirus from the cruise ship MV Hondius are being evacuated to the Netherlands. Meanwhile, the ship, which was docked in Cape Verde with all the remaining passengers, is expected to arrive in Tenerife, Spain's Canary Islands, on Saturday.
Una vez ha concluido la evacuación de todas las personas sintomáticas en Cabo Verde, el barco va a continuar rumbo a Canarias, donde espera arribar en el plazo de 3 días al puerto secundario de Granadilla de Abona.
Garcia added that once in Spain, all foreign citizens will be evacuated to their country of origin. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said that the overall public health risk remains low and that the disease is not like the COVID-19 pandemic. The WHO identified 8 cases from the ship, including 3 deaths, 1 critically ill patient and 3 individuals with mild symptoms. Passengers began falling ill a month ago. A Dutch woman died in South Africa on April the 26th after having left the cruise and taken a commercial flight following the death of her husband. Officials are now trying to trace people on that flight. The first symptoms included fever and gastrointestinal disorders, acute respiratory distress syndrome and shock. The rare disease is usually spread from infected rodents, typically through urine, droppings and saliva.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Hungary had returned cash and gold taken from employees of a state-owned Ukrainian bank. In March, Hungarian police raided a convoy of cash carriers near Budapest, seizing cash worth millions and 9 kilos of gold. Hungarian authorities then opened an investigation into money laundering, suspecting the funds could be linked to criminal activities. Hungary's outgoing Prime Minister Viktor Orbán ordered the government to hold the cash and gold for up to 60 days while the investigation was underway. However, lawyers representing the bank and its employees argue the Ukrainian vehicles were carrying out a routine transfer from Austria to Ukraine. And Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha accused Hungary of kidnapping and state terrorism. Zelensky has now said the release of the assets marks an important step in relations with Hungary.
European capitals have failed to provide targeted measures to shield suffering households and businesses from soaring energy prices, Helge Berger, Deputy Director of the International Monetary Fund, told Euronews Europe Today programme. He urged member states to focus on concrete solutions for the most vulnerable.
Governments are trying. It's usually a mix of good and bad policies, but most governments have in some way or the other tampered with the energy prices, which is not the way it should be going. So as time passes, if the situation continues, we need to be more targeted.
According to the IMF, oil prices have surged by around 70%, while European gas prices remain roughly 45% above pre-war levels. Although less severe than the 2022 shock, the increases are still expected to weigh heavily on growth. In the current energy shock, the IMF noted that 33% of electricity subsidies, if untargeted, could go to the 20% richest of the population, compared to 11% for the poorest. This gap is even wider when it comes to transport fuel subsidies, which the IMF identified as potentially benefiting the richest households for 34% rather than the poorest for 9% if the measures are untargeted.
The United Nations has called on Israel to immediately release 2 activists taken from a Gaza-bound aid flotilla, demanding an investigation into accounts they had been severely mistreated. Spanish national Saif Abukashek and Brazilian Tiago Avila, who have been held in a prison in Ashkelon, were among dozens of activists on the Gaza-bound flotilla intercepted by Israeli forces in international waters off the coast of Greece last Thursday. According to a statement by the UN's Rights Office, Israel must immediately and unconditionally release the Global Summit Flotilla members who were detained in international waters and brought to Israel, where they continue to be held without charge. Representatives for both activists have accused Israeli authorities of abusing the 2 men who have been on hunger strike for the past 6 days. Separately, the Global Summit Flotilla announced that Avila's mother passed during his time in prison. The flotilla's vessels set sail from France, Spain, and Italy with the aim of breaking Israel's blockade of Gaza and delivering humanitarian aid to the war-ravaged Palestinian territory.
France's political left called for unity at a rally in Paris on Tuesday night following the announcement of hard-left France Unbowed Party's leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon that he'll be running for the presidency in 2027. The move has sparked discontent among the country's more moderate leftists, who would rather someone less polarizing than the 74-year-old French politics veteran. Lawmakers from the leftist Green Party, the Socialists, and the After Party have cast doubt over his chances of winning, given his track record in his 3 prior attempts in 2012, 2017, and 2022. Mélenchon has failed to reach a runoff vote in all 3, but believes his chances this time round are far higher. His biggest challenge will be against the far-right National Rally, who've been gaining popularity over the years across France's mainstream. Speaking to local media, Mélenchon called for a common front with Spain against the war being waged by the US and Iran and against Israel in the Middle East. He also warned that Europe is threatened by widespread war and a looming economic and social crisis, which he has previously blamed on capitalism. Mélenchon expressed confidence in his party's ability to win, saying, quote, "I think we're going to beat them, hands down." The National Rally's candidate will either be embattled 57-year-old Marine Le Pen, widely regarded as the face of right-wing politics in the country, or her lieutenant 30-year-old party leader Jordan Bardella. Their candidate will be selected after a decision is taken by an appeals court in July on Le Pen's eligibility after she was handed a political ban over her party's misuse of EU funds. France's left say they want to create a, quote, "real union excluding France Unbowed," and hold a primary to decide on their candidate.
U.S. entrepreneur and founder of CNN, Ted Turner, died on Wednesday at the age of 87. Turner had been suffering from the degenerative disease Lewy body dementia. Turner played a major role in transforming the news business after founding CNN in 1980, the first 24-hour all-news TV network. But he sold the company to Time Warner in 1996 in a $7.3 billion mega deal and was then gradually pushed out. Turner was also known as a yachting enthusiast and philanthropist who donated $1 billion to United Nations charities, while he also owned sports teams in Atlanta. His television empire included TBS and TNT channels for sports and entertainment, among others.